Welcome back, everyone. We're back working on our 1962 Simplicity Wonder Boy 600 again. In this video, we got another challenge for us. If you saw the video where we tore this apart, the seat was in really bad shape on this tractor. Good luck trying to find a seat to replace this with. I looked on eBay and a few other of my parts suppliers. They're just not out there, so we're going to have no other choice to repair this seat we got and make this seat work. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started on this, and I'll show you what we're going to do to attempt to fix this seat to make it show worthy and usable. So this is what it looks like here. Starting out is really gotten thin. The holes and the rust through here. The edging that comes around the front where you sit this is really rusty and thin. Here's the back side. The good news on this, though, as bad as it looks, is this is solid right here where it bolts onto the tractor. If this was not in this kind of condition where it bolts on, we would really be in trouble here. So this is something I can work with. Now the best way what I'm going to go through and do this is I'm going to just take some JB Weld and just carefully layer this around these holes here, and this we're going to lightly sand this and try to bring this back so it looks more presentable for shows, and as well being usable. A guy can sit on it and you know you're not going to go through the seat. So we'll see how this goes with a JB Weld on here, getting this all laid out. And once we do this and everything comes together, we're going to put a real heavy thick primer on here and sand all this out so it looks convincing. We'll start out in a small spot here and start mixing our JB Weld. Now I know a lot of you out there are going to be questioning me right now. Is JB Weld going to be strong enough? Is it going to hold up? Well, I can tell you this right now. You don't want to underestimate this stuff. JB Weld is actually stronger than what you think it is. I've used this stuff for a very long time on, let me try to think of an example, different things that I've done. You know, I've used it on some engine blocks for external leaks, and you know, 25 years later, it's still holding up. You know, and that's going through constant heat cycles of going from hot to cold. So that's one thing that sold me on this stuff. And as well, you know, an engine does have vibration to it, so it goes through that as, you know, it withstands vibration. I believe it's all how you mix the stuff up and you apply it. Now, what I found works best for doing JB Weld is some people will mix it on a piece of cardboard. That's a bad idea because I believe the cardboard has a tendency that it can suck some of the porosities, you know, that are in this stuff and pull it into that cardboard, where it's going to take some of the strength out of it. Now what I do when I mix JB Weld up like this, I just take this is out of an old lacquer thinner can. I just cut the tin off of it like this and save this for mixing pads for this stuff. That way you're mixing it on metal. So we'll go ahead and just carefully start laying this stuff down. And again, another reason why I'm using JB Weld is because this stuff is very easy to work with. You can sand it and machine it fairly easy, which is something that we need in this situation. So I'm just going to go through and layer this down where all the holes are that I see, to fill them in, and then we'll sand them out. Now mind you, this is not going to be 100% perfect, okay? You know, as bad as this is, but I can make it a lot better than what it is. And something else that I may consider doing with this is I may even try to find a nice little seat cover, padded seat cover to put on this as well. But we gotta have something decent to put the seat cover on, right? So I'll go ahead and layer all this on. Now here's another tip I'll give you for doing this approach that helps out a lot. Get yourself like an old body filler paddle. Just take and cut it like this, and you can take and use it to spread this stuff out so it fills in the pinholes better, and as well it makes it easier to sand so you don't have so much to sand. See, I'm just lightly spreading that stuff out. Just like so. This will definitely be some time consuming work here. We're not going to get this done all in one day. Right, that's after one little light coating. Now I'm going to have to take and let this sit overnight and let this cure up, because as you can see where that's poking through, that's where a hole was that the JB Weld's coming, that's seeped through. So we got to let that harden up, and once that does, and then we'll sand that down, and then we can apply another coating on this to start getting that filled in and forming back the way it was. So like I said, this is going to be a lengthy process to do, but the end result will be worth it in the end. Well, that JB Weld is sat on this seat and it's hardened up really good. So our next step, what we're going to do is I'm going to get the orbital sander out with some 60 grit sanding disc, and we're going to start smoothing all this out on here. So I'm not sure if it's going to be a one and done as far as with a JB Weld. Once we get going on more, that's going to be determined as it comes out. This is what it looks like after it's sat for a couple of days. So we'll get the disc out and see how this process goes. So one thing nice about Michigan today, it's 60 degrees out here today after having a winter, so it's nice to be able to get outside and do some work and get our vitamin D, right? So a couple things that you're going to need when you're doing this kind of work that I find very beneficial when you're doing body filler work or even JB Weld with resin is I got this box full of Dura-Gold sanding disc. I got this right from Amazon. You get a box of 25 for $18. It's really reasonable. This is a sticky back that sticks right on your sander, and you know, I'm quite impressed with them. You know, I'd say they're pretty comparable up there along with 3M. And something else too is I got this. This isn't a 3M respirator. This is a knockoff brand. I got this right off on Amazon, and this mask is awesome too. So I'm going to be using these two products. If you're interested in checking this stuff out, I'll put a link up in my description on it. So let's go ahead and see how this is going to go with our sanding. See, this is cool how it peels off just like that. So I'm seeing after hitting this with a 60 grit, it's going to be a little easier starting out with the disc grinder on a hard disc that's 40 to get this down a little bit quicker. And then I'll go back over it with a 60 grit just so I don't kill that sanding disc right off the get-go like I did the first one. Well, it's come together. It's starting to look like I know what I'm doing here. So got all that JB Weld all sanded out, and one coat that I did is going to do it. All the major holes are all filled in, and on the back is smoothed out. It's able to go through and recut some of these holes so they're round again. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to wipe this down, and we're going to take and put some primer on this and see how it comes out. Then once that's done, what will be left is I got some regular body putty that will go over some of the pinholes on here and different imperfections, and let that dry up, then sand that, and then it'll be ready for another coat of primer. Then of course we'll put this on the tractor and it'll be ready for the high build primer. Okay, so the next step we're going to do, we're just going to take some of this Bondo glazing spot putty, and we're just going to go over some of these pinholes and nicks in here the JB Weld didn't fill in. And we'll let this sit up, and once that sets up, then we'll take and wet sand this, then reapply this some of the shadow primer, as I call this right here. That's not really what it's called. I just call it that because I use that to see what my surface looks like before I get it prepared for a high build primer. The stuff just lays down just like this. It'll take you a minute to put this stuff down. All right, I got all that glazing putty put on here and all the imperfections, so I'll let this stuff sit overnight and dry. Then we'll come out and sand all this down, and we'll put another coat of the dark gray primer on this, and well, it should be ready to bolt back on the tractor. Alrighty, well, it's a beautiful day up here in Michigan. It's 72 degrees out, real nice outside today. Good day to be outside working. It's however, it's windier than the gales in November up here in Michigan, but hey, we'll take it over snow right now, especially this time of year. So we're gonna start wet sanding our glaze putty on this seat we filled in. I'll come get you guys in a minute and see what we're working with. We're going to take some 320 grit sandpaper and just start sanding all this putty down, filling all of our pinholes and that we put on here. Then we'll be hitting this with a primer. One thing nice about this glazing putty is it does sand rather easy. Like I say, the only complication is going to be trying to sand it with all these holes going through here and not have your sandpaper catch on it, but minor details on that. We'll get through it. And we'll get this first part all sanded down here, then once we put the primer on here, I'll tell the story if it'll be good enough that when we put the high build primer on, if it'll grab any other imperfections in there. 9 times out of 10, I put this stuff on heavy enough. That's all I need to do to achieve the appearance I want it to have. As you can see right here, this 320 grit is taking that putty down really quickly. It will probably take me a good, I'd say probably a good 20 minutes to the half hour to get this all sanded out the way I want it to before I put some more of this dark shadow primer on it and see what it looks like. Well, this is all sanded down here. She come out really good. It only been a few seconds for you guys, but between doing this side and the back side, I've got about a half hour worth of sanding in here. So we'll go ahead and go over this with a primer. It's gonna be kind of challenging out here as windy as it is, but we'll just kind of make do with it. See how this goes on here. Hey, it sure is windy up here in Michigan. I hope this isn't going to turn out to be another windy summers like we had in the past. Doesn't make going out fishing in the lake much fun. Well, there we have it. That's all coated with shadow primer, and she looks really good. Now once we start getting in the process of putting this high build primer on here, this seat is gonna, I said it's not gonna be perfect, but I tell you what, once we get this primer on here and start sanding it, it will be pretty daggone close. Yeah, well, now we can take and bolt this seat back on the tractor. Now that that phase is complete. That's how windy it is right here. You just see how the wind's blowing that camera right now. Well, I tell you what, everyone, that's a wrap on this video. You look at this seat now compared to what it looked like when we started. It is definitely a major improvement. I mean, this looks so good. I could go into business restoring old metal seats for people right now. I'm really impressed how it's turned out. But thanks for tuning in for this seat restoration. A lot of people would have scrapped this seat and either come up with something that was an original seat to put on it or tried to find one, but I really didn't have that option on this, and I wanted it to be original. So the next step, what we got to do, we'll come back on, is got this all together. We'll get the high build primer and we'll start coating this whole tractor with that and start getting to the point where it's a lot of sanding and surface prep now from here on out, getting it ready to put the color on. Thank you for everybody for stopping by, checking this video out. I appreciate each and every one of you. Feel free to leave a comment down below if you're digging this content and liking what we're doing. I try to answer as many comments as I possibly can. Until next time, we'll see you all in our next video. Take care.